Hi, and welcome to The Doctors Are In, a collaboration series between myself and Irit Landgraf, where two scrappers who happen to be doctors in our day jobs give you two different takes on solutions to what ails your creative body and soul. Today, we're going to be talking about using stamps and inks on our scrapbooking pages. We each have a total of 3 videos for this clinic. We each have 1 introductory video, and then we also each have 2 process videos. So check out the playlist to make sure that you catch all of the videos from this clinic. And if you missed any of the other clinics, you can check those out. They're also in the playlist. So let's get started. I'm starting out by experimenting with stamping onto felt. So I have my felt down, and this is 3 stamps of VersaFine, and then this one is one version, like one stamp of Stampin' of StazOn, and then I don't know what that other one is. It's a color I kind of got mixed up when I was stamping, and so basically, I just wanted to make sure that it was possible to stamp on felt and that it would come out decently. It doesn't come out awesome or crisp or anything, but I think it's going to work for the purposes of this project. So now that I know it's going to work, I'm just going to put all this stuff aside for a few minutes. I printed up my photo at 2.5 by 2.5 and changed it to black and white. And now I'm going to select some die cuts. I'm not going to use any pattern paper from my stash for this page, but I think I might make a themed patterned paper out of stamps. So because I'm trying to use lots of stamps on this on this project. So I'm just having a look at some of the die cuts in my stash. I always use the Doctors Are In series as an opportunity for me to dive into my stash. Usually I make a kit, but this time I didn't. I'm just freewheeling in my scrap room without a kit and without even a stash kit picked out. Having a look through these chipboard pieces as well. And basically, because my photo is black and white, I can really pick any color scheme. So I thought I'd just look at the contents of those die cut pieces and see what die cuts were relevant thematically or topic wise. I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off of 2 adjacent sides of this pink cardstock. This is basil cardstock, and my Stampin' Up! Trimmer, the blade is a little dull, and so I messed up one of the edges, so I just decided to distress all of the edges so that it doesn't look like I messed up. And then I have that black and white striped piece of Felicity Jane paper from my stash. I have a couple of copies of their black and white collection, and I love to use that for a mat, so I'm going to use it for a mat for this one. I especially love using that diagonally striped paper for mats on layouts that have a black and white photo. I think it really frames in the photo nicely and pulls the black and white element out to the edges of the paper. I just love it. So now, using inks, I decided instead of using mist, because the idea here is to use inks, I decided to use this distress ink. And the color is Picked Raspberry. I think that's what it's called. Yes, it is the color. I'm using the packaging technique here to add some color onto my page right around where I think the photo will go. And I made sure as I picked up some of that paper, I just wanted to make sure that I was getting some of the little dots. Like I wanted it to have like a dotted look. And you'll see that it kind of pulls up into little circles on the nonstick mat. And so I just wanted to kiss the packaging to those little dots so that I could transfer them onto the background paper so it would look kind of like splats. I wanted to get a real fine, like I wanted a kind of like a large amount of color in the center, but then I wanted little bits of dots and sprinkles and stuff kind of radiating out from it. And with the packaging technique, you get a really natural flow of beautiful colors, and they overlap really nicely and layer and blend together quite nicely. And so I wanted to do a tone-on-tone look here. And now I'm going to use this chipboard frame. It is a really soft wood veneer, but it's an illustrated wood veneer. I really like it. And instead of using it for a frame, I'm going to use it for a mat. But first, I'm going to mat my photo with black. That just helps my photo pop off the page a little bit and gives it a little bit more emphasis. Had to just switch around that little channel on my Stampin' Up! Trimmer. As I mentioned, my trimmer is not very sharp right now. I need to replace the blade. So I really like how that looks. It's basically double matted, one with black and one with the wood veneer frame. It's not a wood veneer, it's wood grain. Did I say wood veneer all that time? Anyhow, it is wood grain. It's a chipboard frame. So I'm really liking how that looks, and I really like how the splatter moves around that photo, and I'm going to use that splatter to guide the way that I design this page. I wanted a horizontal strip of patterned paper, but I'm actually going to make the pattern paper. I want it to be themed for my page, and my first thought was that I would go diagonally across that and make like a diagonally striped pattern using like spelling out the letters in the word garage, because that's the store that she ordered from. Now this pink, I like the idea of it being tone on tone. This pink is really nice, but it's a little bit too creamy looking. I've got the nice pale pink, and then I've got that picked raspberry is almost like a magenta color, like it's got a little bit of a purpley hue to it, and I didn't want to introduce too many different red or pinks, and this strip already is another shade of pink. It's a little bit of an orangey pink, like a peachy pink. So what I would have really liked would be to spell garage in a diagonal way, all the way, kind of like repeated all over that paper to make it into a pattern paper that basically says garage in these block letters. These are Scraptastic block letters. And so I'm thinking about doing that. If I use that Brilliance white ink, it basically like it soaks right into the paper, into the cardstock, I'm trying to say. And so that is going to give me a really, really faint pattern, and I don't want it to be so faint. So I'm thinking about what I might want to do about that as I spell out the word garage. And basically, I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to do embossing. If I want this to be white on pink, in order for there to be enough contrast, I'm going to need it to be a really, really bright white, and so I think I will emboss. So because I'm thinking about embossing, I think I'm going to abandon this idea because it will be way too hard to stamp. I'm basically going to have to stamp garage over and over again, but then I'm going to have to go back and fill in the letters, and it's going to be too much of a hassle. So I thought what I'd like to do ideally is be able to do multiple stamping of the same stamp, since I'm going to be embossing. If I was inking, I might not have minded doing something so fiddly. So I grabbed my embossing tools, and I'm just going to get I think it's called an embossing buddy, or a little powder pouch here that you just rub over your paper, and that just keeps the embossing powder from sticking to anything other than where you've put your glue. So this is a Versamark pad, which is basically a little pad of glue. And I'm just stamping the $sign because this is about shopping, so I thought I would make some themed patterned paper using $signs all over it. And so I am going ahead and stamping all over that little strip. And this is a new package of fine it's fine embossing powder, extra fine white embossing powder. And I really like the look of white embossing powder. It's one of my favorite looks, and I don't do it often enough. Just taking a tiny little paintbrush to wipe off any spots where there were stray bits of embossing powder. I'm trying to do this in the air so that you can see it, but it's really not, I'm not doing a very good job of that. So I'm going to put it down on the mat, and you can still see it even though the gun is sort of over it at the same time. So this embosses quite quickly, and just make sure that you keep your heat gun moving around a lot if you're going to hold it so close like I just did. If you hold it further away, you'll be a lot less likely to scorch it, and it does turn a little bit brown if you scorch it too much, so just be careful with it. But if you make a mess, you can always just flip it around and try again on the other side, so it's no big deal. Again, that's a non-stick mat that I was using. And now I have this really cool pattern paper with $signs all over it. I really love it. I think it turned out great. It's not perfect, but that's okay because this is a pretty messy page with mixed media, like with the ink and stuff on the background. And I'm going to be pretty casual in how I put my embellishments. So this is basically the structure of the layout. I thought I would use this little mat as well. It's kind of a journaling piece, but I'm going to use it as a mat. And I'm going to cover it all up entirely, so I didn't really need to use it at all, but it does kind of give me something to stick the die cuts to. And I'm just going overboard here. This is not the way that it's going to end. I'm just kind of sticking pieces in just to get a sense. I wanted to use some flowers, and I wanted to just have a sense of how these flowers are going to look all layered over one another, but I'm not really taking too much time to make sure that they're all looking perfect or anything. So I want something large over to the left and something large-ish over to the right as well to give me a little bit of balance. I pulled out the Amy Tangerine on a whim. So the first die cut set that I was using is what's it called? Oh My Heart by Paige Evans. And now this set of die cuts is Amy Tangerine on a whim. And I really love that large Sweet Things heart. And I think it looks perfect there down on the side, kind of hanging out of the layers. And if I use that, because it's such a dark and foiled pink, I feel like I need something else dark and foiled to balance it off on the other side. So this outlined flower shape is perfect for this. So I'm going to put that behind these flowers. And then I also pulled out that watermelon, which seems like a random shape, but actually my daughter's icon is a watermelon. So she uses watermelons to signify herself when she's texting people. She uses the watermelon emoji. They all, like her and all of her friends, they all have different foods, and hers is watermelon. So I'm just putting back that $ stamp. It was a Scraptastic stamp, and I'm just pulling out the chipboard to have a look at it and see if there's anything else that I might want to use. And now I'm grabbing my MISTI tool again. Remember at the beginning I had this out, and this was just a scrap piece of felt. I made sure that I picked a scrap that was the same brand that I would be using. And so now I'm just looking at what embellishments I have and thinking about which of the colors of felt might look good with this. So I basically had two colors picked out. One was a pink, like a really dark pink, and then the other is this julep, which is a really creamy green color. I get my felt from benzydesigns.com. I love their felt. It's really great quality and holds up to die cutting and keeps its shape and form. And as you can see, that's actually important for what I'm going to be doing here, because the felt is going to stick to the stamps a little bit, and I really don't want it getting misshaped. So I am spelling out my title so that I know what letters I need to stamp and how many of each of the letters I need to stamp. I like keeping my MISTI tool sideways for making videos because it just feels easier that way. I'm going to put out a whole bunch of stamps that I'm going to need to make this title, and I'm kind of skipping the ones that I don't have enough letters for. So for example, O-N-L-I, and then I'd need another N there. So I just put a space there. So I'm spelling out online shopper. And of course, I'm not going to have enough letters to do that, but I will start with these letters and then I'll go back and I'll add the letters that are missing. So as you can see, every time I pull up, the felt sticks to the stamps because my stamps are good quality photopolymer stamps, so they are a little bit sticky. And so I just pulled in some extra magnets just to try to keep that down, but it doesn't actually work all that well. So it still kind of stretches the felt a little bit. And as you can see, with one layer of ink, it's kind of legible. With two layers of ink, it's better. The E and the R, I think, are perfect at this point, but the ones that are over on the side don't seem to be stamping quite as well. So I was going to cut some of those off. I'm just going to clean this, and I am using StazOn, so my stamps are getting quite stained, but I don't really care about that. They'll still stamp really well. My idea for this project was I wanted to use letter stamps in as many ways as I possibly could. So I wanted to make a patterned paper using letter stamps. I ended up using the $sign, but that came from a number stamp set. I wanted to stamp my title using stamps, letter stamps, and I wanted to do something different than just stamping it on cardstock and cutting it out. So I thought if I could make this work on felt, I thought that it would look really cool and give some texture and just be a different option. I haven't seen this done before, so I wasn't really sure if it was going to work at all. I'm basically just restamping some of the letters that I felt just didn't turn out very well the first time around. And so I'm giving some of them another go, and some of them I need two of. So I'm also kind of considering that as I stamp all of these shapes, all of these letters. And then the third way that I want to use letter stamps on this project is for my journaling. So my goal was to use at least 3 different sets of letter stamps. And if you include the $sign, which was part of a number stamp that actually matched with a letter stamp that I have. And then these are Kelly Perky letter stamps. I think they're called Destination or something. And then I'll show you the letter stamps I'll use for my journaling. I specifically chose these letter stamps because I thought they'd be easy to cut out of felt, because they're basically little tiles, and so I didn't want to have to fiddle with cutting around all the individual shapes of letters. So I was really pleased to see that I had this letter stamp set in my stash, and I'm just going to try again with these. I didn't want to use too much felt, so I'm kind of flipping it over and using the back side, which is going to make a mess on my Misty tool, but that's okay. I'm trying to clean these. I'm thinking if I could, I actually probably shouldn't have cleaned them quite as much because I was trying to make them not be so sticky so that the felt doesn't stick to them quite so much. I want the ink to come off on the felt instead of the felt suctioning itself onto the stamps. But anyhow, I think the more I cleaned it, the more thirsty I made those stamps. And so I probably should have just left a coat. Those turned out really great. So I thought now that those turned out so great, I think maybe the key is to just do a couple at a time instead of doing so many at a time. So I will go back and restamp a couple more. So now that I have those and they look so great, the PNL, now my standards are going up a little bit. And so I'm deciding to restamp the ones that say shop as well, SHOP. I was happy with those until I saw the PNL, and then I was like, nope, those ones have got to go. So 3 layers, I think, is what these are going to take, and they look pretty okay like that. Now, the ink is really staying quite wet. I'm using Stays On, but then I'm adding a layer of, I don't know if you noticed, but my last layer for each set, so I'm doing 2 layers of Stays On. My last layer I'm using is VersaFine, because VersaFine is a little bit juicier and wet, and I thought that it might kind of sit on top of the felt a little bit better and not be so sticky, but I don't know if that made a difference or not, but anyhow, I was just playing around with it, trying to get it to work, and I got decent stamps out of these. If you're looking for perfection, I wouldn't really recommend stamping on felt, but if you don't mind a little bit of a messy look, then I think these look really great. So I'm just sticking them onto a strip of scrap paper here, just a plain strip of white scrap paper that it's from my introductory video to this series, where I was talking about all the different kinds of ink. So I'm going to cut out each one using my scissors, and they're pretty easy to cut out because they're just basically rounded rectangles. And I think they're made to look like the letters on an airport sign, like an old-fashioned airport sign or something. They look a little bit like an old-fashioned digital clock that had the flaps that would fold from the centers. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly. But anyhow, I really, really love these letters. They're really cool. And I've used them a couple of times, but this is the first time I've used them as a full title on a 12 by 12 layout. So I'm really pleased. You can see my fingers getting more and more inky as it goes because these letters, the ink on them just didn't seem to want to dry. And so I've already gone upstairs and washed my hands once just because I'm so worried that I'm going to have inky fingers and touch something from my project. So there's my inky fingers. I went upstairs and I washed my hands again. And what I'm going to do with this strip of letters that are stuck to the paper is I'm actually going to sew right through them, and I spread them out a little bit so that as I sew through them, it's going to be kind of like the thread will be like the strings of a banner, so that this title will be a felt banner with stamped letters on it. And I made sure that I left lots at the beginning and lots at the end. And then I also again, every time I do anything, I get inky fingers. And also the foot of my machine was inky too. So I had to take a baby wipe and wipe before I almost sewed on that without cleaning the foot. And then I noticed right before I started to sew that it was really black and inky. So I just used a baby wipe to clean my presser foot. And I sewed around the outside edges of the $ paper that I made and also around the outside edge of the cardstock. And now I'm going to put all of these pieces back together the way that they were. I'm going to start by adhering the $ paper to somewhere around the middle of the page. It doesn't have to be exact. And then I'll insert these little flowers. And I thought about covering up backing the Sweet Things die cut, that heart. I thought about backing it with a piece of vellum or a piece of cardstock or something, but then I thought I really liked the way that you could see the little tiny bits of the flowers. And now here's where I'm going to, first I'm going to hit it with a heat gun because I think that might help the ink dry a little bit or set a little bit. And now I'm just very, very carefully peeling the paper above the thread and then peeling the paper below the thread. And I'm just using my thumbnail to secure the thread so that I don't pull too much on the thread. I don't want to break the thread. And so I err on the side of leaving some scraps of paper behind, and then I can just pull them off now. And it doesn't matter if I pull them off behind, like if there's a little bit of paper left behind some of these pieces of felt, as long as they're not between the pieces of felt. So now look at that. It's this cute little banner. I really like how that turned out. I'm inky fingers all over the place with this layout. And so now that I have the banner, I want to make sure. It seemed like that $ paper was really crooked, but I don't think it is. It seems crooked, but I don't think it is. So I'm just going to use my regular tape runner. I'm using Tombow Mono tape runner right now. And I am just going to place all of these little die cuts so that they look like they're sticking out. Well, they don't look like, they actually are sticking out from under the photo. And the purple flowers, like those little bluebell flowers, are really the only purple thing on this page. I don't really care. It's one of those things that doesn't really bother me all that much. It might have bothered me on a different day if I was doing this, but today it didn't seem to bother me at all. And so if I was more bothered by it, one thing that I could do is find that blue somewhere else in one of the other die cuts and make sure that it was somewhere else on the page. It looks like a cookie, this heart-shaped cookie that says, hey sweetie, hey sugar. I'm going to outline it because it doesn't have enough distinction or differentiation from the die cuts behind it, and it's going to be an accent piece, so I would like it to stand out a little bit more. It still doesn't stand out quite enough, especially compared to the sweet things that's right across the page from it, across the photo from it. So I'm thinking, what else can I do here? I feel like I want something high contrast, like a really strong black or something. So I'm looking at the die cuts or not at the die cuts, but I'm looking at the chipboard. And as I was looking at the chipboard, I saw this. It's almost exactly the same color of julep as the felt. And it's a little pencil case / makeup bag or whatever. And it says Live Happy. And Liv loves those little suitcase, those little brief pencil cases. And there's a little heart that I can put on top of the other heart to add to the contrast, just to make that a little bit more of a focal point so it doesn't blend in quite as much. So that little pencil case is perfect because it's exactly the kind of thing that Liv would actually have. It also has her name on it if you take off the E. So I'm going to put that heart right there so that it's covering up the E. And now it looks like it's Live Happy. So I also pulled out that cat head from the Cute Girl collection. I really like that. It's so cute. And she is a really big cat lover. And so if I can get a kitty cat on this layout, I think it would be great. I've already got the little makeup bag as part of her. I've got the dollar signs, kind of part of her shopping spree, and the journaling will explain that a little bit. And the watermelon, I thought I've got it kind of up there in the wings, and I don't know if it's going to make it to the page or not. But these are all things that make this page uniquely themed to my older daughter. So I'm definitely wanting to be mindful of all the elements that I'm putting in this page. It just makes it fun. It makes it so that, some people might not even notice that. They'll just flip through it and say, oh, what a cute layout. But I think when my girls flip through it, they'll be like, oh, that's just like your makeup case. And, oh, that's, there's a watermelon on it for Liv. And I went to just put this on just to see how it's going to fit. And I loved how it landed so much that I just decided to glue it right down. I like how it looked kind of swoopy. Like it wasn't in a perfect arc the way that banners sometimes are. It wasn't symmetrical. It was just kind of laid on there in a swoop. So I just used my Tombow Mono Multi to add a tiny bit of glue under each one of those tiles. That'll keep them put, especially where that ink is not necessarily all that dry. I don't want this banner to be moving around at all on this page because there's some stamping on the back sides of some of them, if you might have noticed. So I'm using my tiny attacher to attach the thread on either side, although some of the thread on the right-hand side is just going to get cut off. I still wanted to attach it with a tiny attacher just so that it's the same as the other. So I just had to add a little bit more adhesive to that heart that covers up the E in the word live. And then somehow that chipboard piece came separated. So I just used a little bit more Tombow Mono Multi adhesive to glue that down. And now I'm going to do a switch. I've decided that, remember that die cut, I really wasn't sure. I was trying to make it stand out to make it more of an accent piece, but it wasn't really working all that well. So instead, I'm going to use this watermelon. I think it looks cute. I just have to decide which angle it's going to go on. And I think I'm going to put it on the other angle from this one. Yep, like that. That way everything is kind of pointing in towards one another. Like the Sweet Things heart is angled the opposite way. And then the watermelon piece is angled this way. And it's a little much all by itself, so I layered it with that heart, and the heart picks up on the black and white that is all the way around the center of the layout, as well as in the photo in the center. So I'm doing my journaling right now. I am writing it out ahead of time because I'm going to be stamping it. And always just track your lettering as you stamp it out, because it's so easy, especially when you're stamping backwards. Like you think you know how from is spelled and you're M-O-R, and then you just want to start going forward. So you might go back to O again. Like it's really easy to go to mess up your lettering when you're stamping. So this is a little tiny set of stamps that I have. I use them mostly for mixed media. I don't use them on scrapbooking pages all that often, and I used to have them at my work for some art therapy work I used to do. And I recently brought some supplies home, and so I am pulling these out, and I'm going to start stamping my journaling right here on my page. Now, I'm going to show you some of this process, but I'm not going to show you all of it because it is quite tedious. These are letter stamps from the dollar store. They were $1 for a little block of these little letter stamps. The problem with them, they're obviously really low cost, very low quality as well. And so they don't stamp the crispest image, and they also don't stay together all that well. So I have my glue dots that I'm using to kind of adhere them back together again when the red rubber separates off of the black foam sticky part that holds it onto the block. And I am working my way backwards, and so I am referring constantly to my written out journaling just to make sure that I spell these things properly. And it really helps to get your head way, way down so that you're basically looking under the stamp. I kind of don't care at this point. Like I'm just letting them be pretty random, like up and down and sideways and stuff. I like that messy look. But there are times when I'm needing to fit a small word into a tiny little space or something. And if I really need the letters to be lined up or to fit together a certain way, I'll just put my head way down on the table so that my cheek is on the table so that I can look underneath of that stamp as I'm stamping it. And you can see the little ridge where the letters are and stamp it exactly where you want it to be. So now I have the top part done, and I'm about to start on the bottom part. And I would recommend that you set all of these letters out in a row so that you can just scan the alphabet really easily and know where all of your letters are instead of having to look through a bunch of random letters for the ones that you're looking for. If you keep the packaging that these come in, they actually come in a little block in alphabetical order, and you could just keep them in that block. And basically you can see the tops of all of the little wooden blocks and pick the letters that you want. That's another way to use these, but I just transferred them into a little Ziploc baggie because I couldn't be bothered with keeping the packaging on it. So my journaling says, I came home from work one day and Liv was asking whether we received any mail, and that's the top part. Then the bottom part reads, she had used her own bank card to order clothes online without us even knowing. So she does have her own bank account, and I was shocked that she didn't ask for my help or ask if it was okay. I mean, she bought 2 tops that were on sale for like $10 each or something, and it was free shipping, and it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, she's like super independent. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I guess it's probably both. Anyhow, we didn't mind that she had done that, but we did warn her that she shouldn't make any big purchases like that without us knowing what it is. She doesn't have much money in her bank account anyways. It's just she gets a $12 allowance every week, but some of that goes towards her cell phone bill, so she doesn't actually have $12 a week. So she can't do too much damage. I think there's only like $40 in there or something now. So yeah, so here we go. I'm capping off the top and the bottom of my journaling with little die cuts, and I couldn't find a die cut for the top, so I added that little butterfly, and I really like the butterfly because it has the pinks and also the mint greens as well. And the flower was one of the die cuts that was in the Paige Evans Take Me Away kit or die cuts. And now I'm going to add just a couple of enamel dots. I want to add little pairs of enamel dots in 3 different places. I'll put 2 up here, and I'm using this really vibrant pink color to pick up on the pink in the foil die cuts from Amy Tangerine. And putting the green enamel dots on that pink heart that says sweet things just breaks up it's kind of a really strong element, and so I wanted to break it up a little bit and put something on top of it. I have a couple of things on top of it. When I flipped that over, several things fell off, and so obviously that chipboard wasn't holding very well. So I just had to add a little bit of extra glue there, and ta-da! We're done. I really love this. Why don't I use my letter stickers, my letter stamps more often? I don't even know. Hopefully I will more now that the Doctors Are In series has given me a reason to pull them out and start using them. So this one, oh, I'm so happy that I got to use letter stamps in 3 different ways on this page. That was my goal for myself, and I was pleased that I was able to pull that off. We'll call the $sign a letter because it did come from a number and letter stamp set. And there are the photos. So you'll get to see all of the photos here now, and that'll show you some close-ups, and you'll get to see how the overall layout looks kind of up close that the video doesn't let you see quite as well. And the color scheme of the green and pink, which I didn't really intentionally set out to do, but it kind of pulls in the watermelon, right? So watermelons are green and pink, and those are not necessarily Liv's favorite colors, but I think that it's a very appropriate layout about Liv. And I love the packaging. It says the wait is over, and she waited all week for her little order of two little tops. And so, oh, it's so cute to see her so excited to get the mail. Although you wouldn't know it from her face. She just doesn't like her picture being taken. Every time I take her picture, she's like, really? Do we have to do this? So anyhow, I hope that you enjoyed this month's clinic. Make sure that you check out Irit's layouts and also her introductory video from this series. Thank you so much for watching, and also special thanks to the following Diamond Tiaras who support me over on Patreon and make these videos possible. Do you use letter stamps on your projects? If so, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how you're using them and what are your favorite letter stamps. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and check out these videos. The Doctors Are In playlist is over on the right-hand side of the page, and some other process videos from me are on the left-hand side. Thanks for watching, and have a really great scrappy week.